Upsetting story this is, Erin. Just take us through this. We understand that Robert de Vries is accused of collecting these items, storing, reproducing them. How many items are we talking about here?
So the full cachet here of media is almost 300,000 different items. That includes photographs, it includes videos, it also includes written short stories and cartoons, all depicting children involved in sexual acts, some of them with adults, some with peers, people of the same age, and it includes children from newborns, toddlers, into pre-teens. So it really is a significant vault of media that the court is considering in this case.
So Erin, take us back to 2010. We know that the police raided his house then. What did they find?
So this is when the police basically retrieved hard drives, at least 7 hard drives and over 30 different DVDs. And what happened in court today was that a forensic expert with information and intelligence on IT tried to link these different documents and items of media with the accused, and also show that some of the DVDs were duplicates. And so that would suggest that perhaps the media on them was being produced in a sort of production line for sale. So it is all this different media contained both in the 30 DVDs and the 7 hard drives, which is being considered by the court. And that 2010 raid, Joanne, took place in Sophiatown, and it followed a tip-off from US authorities. So postal authorities in New York had noticed these parcels coming through from South Africa with encrypted DVDs. So the media on the DVDs was not accessible without a password, and it's alleged that the accused basically used the encryption to coax his clients into paying him. So once he'd received the income, he allegedly then provided the clients with the password, and they could access the child pornography that was on these discs.
Erin, we know he's not denied this material is actually child pornography, but he's claiming he's not to blame. If not, who is?
So he alleges that 3 tenants who were staying in his property in Sophiatown are responsible for the media. But the case dates back at least 8 years. So the question arises, why did it take him so long to then announce these other 3 people he says are responsible for the child pornography? And that's something that's likely to come up in court in the days to come. But he says the material is, as it stands, child pornography. That's not disputed. It's sort of common cause in court. The question is, who is the source of it? And his advocate, for example, asking today, how can the forensic expert with IT knowledge link the data on the DVDs and the hard drives with the computers at the accused's home? So it's become a very technical matter in court today, dealing with issues of different email addresses, different kinds of files, JPEGs, zip files, GIFs, all of the rest, and trying to pin them down on the accused in this matter, who's a 57-year-old father himself.
That appears to be one of the worst aspects of the story. Now, what do we know about his alleged modus operandi in terms of how he distributed this material, Erin?
So this really developed over time. According to a statement from the NPA back in November of last year, it's understood that the accused was gathering child pornography from as early as 1998. So one of the issues around the charges is that he isn't accused of producing the material, but rather collating it and then selling it for profit. Those are the charges, the allegations from the state. So he started allegedly gathering this material from the web and storing it on these hard drives, and over time he produced these DVDs, which he was then posting. He'd post them from an anonymous address, allegedly, and he'd also post them allegedly using pseudonyms, so he wouldn't be linked by his name on his ID, his real name, to the content. And that's where things get a little tricky, because he'd obviously get remuneration for the media, and he'd use pseudonyms like Bob or Andy or kind of generic names. But then when he got the cash transfers from overseas, it seems that things got a little complicated, because they would eventually lead back to his actual name and his actual residence in South Africa. So he initially used postage, and that's where the US authorities seem to have kind of picked up on things. And over time, he grew more sophisticated in that technology had moved on. So it's alleged that he then began using hyperlinks and also baiting, you could say, his clients with little sneak peeks of this material showing children involved in sexual acts. And so there is data on the record and from testimony we heard today about how he'd used hyperlinks, for example, and various email addresses to basically offer his clients a taste of what they wanted, and also using code words, Joanne. So he'd say, I have woodwork available, and someone would say, do you have would work for 4-year-olds available, and then within the circle of patron and client, people would understand what exactly that meant and that they were referring to child pornography.
Erin, was he actually involved in the filming of this pornography himself, or was he acting as an agent for someone else who was creating this?
So as far as the case stands at the moment, all we know is that he was collating and compiling this information, or is alleged to have done so. That's the case of the state. But there's no allegation on the record in this case that he was actually involved in recording the material initially. But under the certain sections of the Act that relate to this case, the Child Pornography Act, it's a crime to both hold child pornography and reproduce it and also sell it. So there's no allegation that he was involved in setting up a film studio or anything like that, but that he'd retrieved this material from the web, then reproduced it and sold it off at a profit. And those are the charges that he faces at this point.
Erin Bates, you've unpacked that so well for us. Thank you very much for explaining to us. It's certainly a case that is going to break some ground and be quite important in terms of the country's fight against child pornography.